Hello. Today on Rebrickable we will be doing an in-depth tutorial for mock submission. We have already covered the Studio mock submission in a separate video, specifically looking at adding a mock with the Studio software. Today we'll be going over the other methods that can be used to add a mock on your Rebrickable account. Same step one is required here. You'll have to provide a name, a theme, and a short description before you get into any of the other options. For all of the methods today, we'll be using this small 4-wide truck as our example mock. Now with this basic information filled in, we can proceed. Again, the common requirement for all mock types is an image. We will add that. I already have this built, ready to go, and I have this photo of it to add for our example image. We also have a mock number at this stage, and it will be saved as a draft from here on out. At this point in the process, we will start to differentiate between different types of instructions and therefore different types of mock submission. The first option is computer-generated PDFs. Then you can specifically denote that they are PDFs from LDD, Lego Digital Designer. You can denote PDFs generated from Studio. And Studio has a tool to help you format instruction PDFs. A lot of the higher end, higher quality mocks on the site use the Studio PDF option. You can also create a photo sequence and export it as a PDF and use that as your instruction file. Then you get to some 3D file options. You can do the LDRAW, LDR file type. You can do the Digital Designer, LXF file type, the Studio file, which we've already looked at in a separate video, or another type of 3D file. Beyond that, you can use plain computer images. You can use a sequence of photos to demonstrate how to build the model. You can also link to an instruction video that shows how to put the model together. And finally, you can use a mobile app, external mobile app, to show how to build your model. Pretty much every mock is going to be one of two categories: a physically built tangible model or a digital file. A digital mock can be a virtual representation of something that you did build yourself with tangible bricks, or it can be completely virtual without a real-life counterpart. Sometimes it is helpful to have built the tangible model to get an idea for how it goes together and how stable it is before you make it into a digital model. How you go about adding a mock to Rebrickable largely depends on which of these two categories it is within. So first we're going to look at how to add mocks that are a tangible model brick build. The method of doing a video or picture process for your mock, your physical mock, will vary a little bit depending on complexity and build style. For example, our truck today is a relatively bottom to top process, and it's also relatively small. And those are kind of the two main factors that will affect how easy it is to do this process. The complexity of the mock in terms of stud building direction and the overall size of the mock. In the process of making a video instruction of the mock, you can also make the step-by-step photo instructions if you just take some pictures as you go along the way. For the video tutorial, you will want to start relatively simply, and you can just show each individual step one at a time, and then the subsequent brick placing that you will need as you go along. You may want to show detail if there's something that's already pre-assembled, like this headlamp that has a tile already attached. But really it's just showing other people who may want to build your mock how it's going to go together throughout the entire process. Once a layer is covered up, that's generally a good idea If you're going to be doing the photo method, that's where you would want to take a picture. That way you don't have too many layers getting covered up at the same time. You don't have to do a photo for every single brick, especially if it's something like this where you can clearly see what's being added. But it is a good idea to take more pictures than you think you will need rather than less. And I find it's handy to keep a brick separator around in case you make a mistake as you're going along. For something like this where the 2x2 plate will be underneath these curve slopes, we'll want to leave those curve slopes off for now and instead put something on the back of the vehicle that we haven't covered up already, like that. You can also add this other brick back here. This would be a good spot for another picture, another photo. Just continue the stacking process, one layer at a time. Now that we know about the 2x2 plate, we can cover that up. Somewhere in here would be a good spot for another picture. Multiple angles never hurt. Add the windshield and the bracket in this step. You may need to add those multiple angles just to help get an idea of what's there. Now we will take this brick, add a few more things. Another good spot for a picture here. Add the roof and the barrel. Most of the time you won't need audio on your video instructions if it's clear exactly what's going on. And one final step would be to add the wheels. A small vehicle mock like this, where you're building mostly studs up, bottom to top, really only takes about a minute or two to get the gist of the build. When you're adding a tangible mock to Rebrickable that does not have a digital counterpart, you're just going based off of an instruction video or instruction pictures, you will be selecting one of those options. You can use the photo sequence option, the video option, or you can, if you have lots of photos, you can combine them into a PDF and do the PDF photo sequence. For the video, you are going to have to host that somewhere other than Rebrickable. Rebrickable doesn't host video instructions, but it does give you a place to copy a link. So YouTube would be a good place to host some video instructions. You can make that an unlisted video, and then just people with this link will be able to view that. Otherwise, if you are uploading a sequence of photos, as long as you have 10 or less, you can add them as individual files, and that will allow other users to download each image and build the creation based on the pictures. So to do that, you can just add a file, and then depending on what you have for instruction images, you can simply drag and drop into the box, upload them one at a time, and those will be available to download on the user end when they want to build your mock. If you have many more than 10 individual pictures, it's probably a better idea to combine them into a Google Doc or any kind of document editor. Then what you can do is export the document as a PDF and upload a single file that contains all the images instead of uploading each image. And to save even more room, you can do additional post-processing, resizing images, doing some cropping, and in general make it a nicer presentation. But hopefully that kind of shows the idea of how you would go about creating a PDF document using a photo sequence. If you have many more than 10 photos, that's probably a better idea when you're looking at doing that method of instructions. Otherwise, you can just add the individual photos and those should order themselves according to their name once they have been uploaded. And that will give you a photo sequence set of instructions. Just remember to match up the type of instruction with what you're actually uploading. As with the other parts of this process, the smaller and simpler your mock is, the easier it will be to add an inventory piece by piece. Of course, when you do have that digital version of the mock, you can simply use that to import a version of your inventory, do a little bit of checking to make sure it's all right, and then you're good to go. But in this case, we are assuming that you strictly have just the plain brick built model. You don't have a digital one to pull an inventory from. So we will do the add part manually. There's a couple strategies when you are adding things piece by piece. The first one is to locate the Lego ID, the part number on the part itself. And these are usually pretty visible, but you have to know where to look on the part, usually on the bottom side or underneath something. It can be helpful to have a light source to help illuminate the part of the plastic that makes up the part number. So we'll add our barrel, which has the number 30139. And right there at the top of the list, we will use our color selector to say reddish brown. If you don't have the exact correct color the first time around, you can do a little bit of double checking. Our quantity here is 1. We'll keep this open to add subsequent parts and click on add part. The barrel is now in the inventory and we can proceed to the next item. We'll do the dish that has a part number on it, 3960. It is the same color, reddish brown, and it is also quantity 1. You can really start to streamline the process if you can keep track of which parts are in the same color, which parts might have the same quantity. That way you're not jumping back and forth. You can do all of your parts in red, all of your parts in white. Of course, for this small little mock, it won't make a huge difference, but it is nice sometimes to be able to work procedurally through. So if you aren't able to find the part number on the piece itself, the next best thing is just to start using size descriptors. For example, our chassis base is a 4x12 chassis. Nothing immediately pops up, so we'll knock that back down a little bit. And when we simply have 4x12, it does bring that up as an option. This time we'll change our color. You can just start typing light gray, the older light gray color. We'll add that in quantity 1. And more or less, you just proceed through your model with this strategy, and it can be helpful to disassemble the model as you go to make sure you have added every part. You're not forgetting anything anywhere. Couple other details to cover with adding the inventory. Now that I've got this finished up, I have a few mistakes I need to fix. I did add an incorrect part when I was looking for this 1x2 with the bar, so I can click on this, edit inventory part, and delete. So I don't want that one anymore. I realized I need to increase the 1x4 from 2 to 3. I can do that very easily with this tool. Increase that part count. In some cases, you might not be able to find the part that you need to add with the search. When that's the case, you can do a more general search and find parts. I'll just search for 1x2 brick. This should find everything related to that brick in size. We'll go ahead and hide the printed parts so we can look through just the brick types. And there it is, 2877. From here, we can add to list our inventory, my mock, and we'll add it to the in progress city tank truck mock. Change the color to black. And in this case, you'll see that the colors are sorted by use instead of alphabetically. So the most used color will be towards the top. Black is pretty common, and we'll change the quantity to 2. We'll add that part like so. Now we need to do our wheels. A search of tire. It's going to bring up a lot of parts. Looking through, should be able to find the parts we need relatively quickly. And in this case, when you find one, you can use the part relationship of pairs to find the other. So from here, we will first of all check this box to keep open because we know we need to get that part. We'll leave it on my MOCs, city tank truck. We'll add 4 of them. And then we'll jump to either version of the rim. We'll go with the old style. Use part, MOC, city tank truck. And the old style is actually only used white and yellow. Add 4. To get back to our MOC in progress and keep editing, we'll go to Account, Submissions, and Edit Submission. Now once we check on our inventory, we should see the tire, rim, and the grooved brick are all in the inventory now. One final step would be to count through the parts that you have in hand and match it up with the part count in the Rebrickable inventory, just to make sure that everything is still matching up and your inventory is hopefully correct. I noticed there was one additional piece that I hadn't added yet, but instead of going back to the part search, I'm actually going to do that right here within the inventory. Since we have pairing information for this roof piece and its hinge, I can just use the hinge directly, open it from here. Now I can use the part added to that MOC the same way I did with the other parts. But instead of searching for it, I was able to access it directly with the paired parts because it does provide a preview for that. So before you head off and find every part that you're missing, keep an eye out for that kind of thing. That can be a little shortcut. We will go back to the submissions. If you actually do want to preview what this will look like before you submit it, instead of clicking on Edit Submission, you can just click on the MOC itself, and this will kind of give you an idea of what it will look like once it is approved and available to the Rebrickable community. You can see all of the individual images uploaded here, and if you were to go and try and build this MOC, you would have to download each one. So once you have more than 10 of those, that gets a bit cumbersome, and it's better to just have a file with the images themselves or a link to a folder somewhere. You can come back and continue to fill out your description if you'd like. You can change the title, the theme. That's all available to edit after you've entered it the first time. It's a good idea to do one final pass through all these steps. Make sure everything is looking good. If you'd like to have a slideshow of different pictures, different angles of the finished model, you can use BrickSafe to do that. And you add a BrickSafe gallery URL right here in this box, and that will, as long as you have 3 pictures, that will create a slideshow of some alternate images to show on the main page. We have our photo sequence instructions lined up, and our inventory looks good. So from here, you would save next step. If you want to add a message to the admins, you would type that here. Otherwise, this MOC is ready to submit as a photo sequence instruction type. So that's kind of the first half where we're looking at MOCs that are plain and simple. You only have the physical model and don't have a digital copy. On the other hand, if you do have a digital version of your MOC, there are some other options for adding your instruction files. We can look at 3D files themselves. Most people will probably be using Digital Designer and BrickLink Studio. So Digital Designer, I do have that program, and I have made a slightly modified version of the truck in this program just for the example. Some of the connectivity is different. I can't put these fences on the way that I have it built, and it also doesn't have, well, my version doesn't have that chassis element, so I had to make it out of similar types of pieces. But for the purpose of the video today, this will do the same thing. Once you have the model complete in LDD, you can use the instruction generator, building guide mode up here, which is the F7 key, or it can be accessed from the view building guide dropdown. We'll just press F7. That will load in the building guide. You can walk through the steps here. The only reason it's putting this dish up front is because it's not actually connected to the rest of the model. But usually if everything is built correctly, you will see it start to lay down the bricks from bottom to top, much in the same way that you would build it if you were doing a video tutorial. I have skimmed through this to make sure it looks good and everything worked for the most part. And the last step is, of course, putting it back on the dish. If the building steps look good, you can go ahead and use the HTML building guide. Find a place to save this. And I'm going to overwrite the one that I already exported. It will generate that and open an HTML document in your browser. And this is basically the same step-by-step process that you had in the software, but now it is in your browser. And once it's in your browser, you can use this print. You should have an option to save it as a PDF, and with a few simple steps, LDD does give you a decent PDF instruction output ability. Save this file. Simple truck. Once you have that PDF exported and saved, you can return to Rebrickable, select your PDF generated from LDD, add file, and now you'll add the PDF that was generated, and that will be the instruction document for this file type. Proceeding to the inventory, we'll go ahead and delete all these parts, bulk edit, select all and delete. We can use the import tool this time because we have an LDD file. We'll use the append parts. There's a few warnings, but nothing too serious here. In this case, we've got some of the color errors because of the parts that were used in LDD. We can bulk edit from here. We want to make sure that all these parts are either light gray or light bluish gray. In fact, when you have multiple parts selected, changing the color is the only thing you can do. Update, and now we should be good to go. Since we did change the chassis, we have a slightly different quantity this time, but this inventory will now match the LDD file. Save and next step, and once again you are ready to submit an LDD version of this truck. On the other hand, you don't actually need a PDF. You can just directly upload the digital designer file itself. We'll remove our PDF and now add the LXF, which is the digital designer file type. Make sure your inventory matches the file type, save and next step, and now this would be ready to submit. A second option for digital MOCs is Studio from BrickLink. You can choose to upload the Studio file itself as the instruction, just as a 3D file, or you can use Studio to export a PDF using the Studio instruction generator. Studio has a digital building environment similar to LDD, but it is still maintained and kept up to date and is the current software that LEGO will point you to from BrickLink. When it comes to making instructions from Studio, one of the key things to keep in mind is to use the step feature as you're building, or once you've imported a model, to break it into these steps. As you place bricks down, you'll want to be adding these steps as you go, very similar to the way that you would break down a video instruction or a photo instruction. It's just going to be done in this digital environment. So for something like this truck, going bottom to top, you'd want to place down the lower bricks first and build your way up. In step 1, you can see we have the base, some of the plates, and then it goes chronologically up to step 2 with the next set of parts. This will translate into the instruction generator. There are options for more in-depth step editing, but you'll probably want to work more with the page design aspect, where you can change how it will look in the layout and change most of the details of each part of the instruction document. Make sure the views are showing where the parts are going. There are plenty of options to customize this with just a few clicks. And once you're happy with the way that it's set up, you can export this document as a PDF or photos. So Studio does have decent capabilities when it comes to creating PDF instructions. From here you can simply upload this PDF document. Select PDF generated from Studio, add the file, and you're good to go. And remember, if you don't want to generate a PDF, you can also upload the 3D file itself. This has the I/O extension and is the Studio file. For this type of file, Rebrickable does offer a building instruction viewer. Here you can preview the model itself in your browser. This reads the information in the 3D file and creates a kind of digital version of that PDF. It's quite handy. Make sure that the instruction type and the file match. Proceed to the inventory. Once again, we have a digital file that we can use to create the inventory. We will use import, drag and drop the Studio file itself, the 3D file, append parts, double check for errors, make sure we're good to go, and here is the slightly different inventory for the Studio version of this truck. If you'd like, you can add a message to the admins. Other than that, we've double checked everything and we're ready to submit the mock for approval. Once it says waiting for approval, you'll just want to wait for the chance to get that reviewed. If there are issues, you'll be notified what needs to be fixed, and then you can update your submission and send it back in.